Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating world of academic writing. Specifically, we're looking at Lesson 38, Recognizing Author's Stance. We're going to figure out exactly how to read between the lines and spot the subjective positions writers take on complex issues, all by paying close attention to the specific language they use. So, think about it. Are academic texts truly objective? We usually just assume that textbooks, peer-reviewed journals, and formal research are, 100% unbiased. We picture a historian or a scientist just listing cold, hard facts, right? Well, today, we're going to completely shatter that illusion. We're stepping into the shoes of academic detectives because, honestly, almost everything you read has a specific angle, and I'm going to show you exactly how to spot it. All right, let's jump into our first section, decoding academic writing. See, authors rarely just hand you pure, unadulterated data. They're almost always trying to convince you of a specific position. To find that hidden angle, we really need to draw a hard line between two things that get mixed up all the time: opinions and stances. An opinion is just a belief, like, I think this policy is terrible. But a stance? A stance is way heavier. It brings evidence, research, and analysis to the table to back up that view. But here is the absolute key to our entire explainer today. A stance is still subjective. It's simply the author's personal judgment based on the specific evidence they cherry-picked to look at. Moving right along to Section 2, Stance versus Perspective. Okay, to uncover an author's hidden agenda, we first have to wrap our heads around what a perspective actually is. Basically, a perspective is just the angle you're looking from. It's essentially an objective starting point. Let's say a city is proposing a massive new bridge over a river. If you look at that bridge purely from a financial viewpoint, you're adopting a specific perspective. You aren't judging the bridge yet, you're literally just deciding which lens to look through. An author could evaluate an issue through any number of common lenses. You've got economic, historical, ethical, environmental, social. The list goes on. Going back to our bridge, an economic perspective means you're crunching the numbers on costs and trade benefits. An environmental perspective, you're looking at how it impacts the local bird habitats. But here's the thing. Simply picking a lens doesn't tell us how the author actually feels about the bridge. It just tells us what part of the whole shebang they're focusing on. So here's the crucial difference. The perspective is the window you're looking through, but the stance, that's the judgment you make about what you actually see out that window. Saying something like, from a financial perspective, well, that just sets the scene. But following it up with, this project is an unjustifiable waste of money, boom, that is the stance. That's the author stepping right out from behind the facts and telling you exactly what to think. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the power of adjectives. Now, if a stance is usually hidden beneath the dry surface of formal writing, how do we actually go about finding it? Well, evaluative adjectives. These are our smoking guns. They reveal exactly how the author is secretly trying to guide our thoughts. When an author tags a noun with an evaluative adjective, they are essentially injecting their own subjective stance right into the middle of what otherwise looks like a totally objective, fact-based sentence. Just look at these word choices for a second. An author could easily just call a piece of research a study and leave it at that. But calling it a reputable study versus an unscientific study, that completely changes how you, as the reader, are going to interpret the data. If I tell you a decision is arbitrary, you're going to instantly distrust it, right? But if I say it's a thorough analysis, you're totally bought in. The author's literally doing the thinking for you through these tiny, sneaky, descriptive words. And looking directly at our source material, you can see how this textbook page points out these exact evaluative words. It perfectly illustrates how these microscopic grammatical choices can completely destroy the neutrality of a sentence. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the data itself. It's entirely about how that data is packaged and sold to you. Let's see how this works in the wild. Section 4, Analyzing Stance in Action. Let's take a really close look at this text discussing early criminology studies. We want to see this author's stance at work. On the surface, this quote just looks like a standard historical fact about a study done by a guy named Goddard in 1912. If you're just passively reading, you'd probably just jot down Goddard, 1912, Kallikak family in your notes and completely move on. But let's look a little closer at those adjectives. Just by dropping the word unscientific, the author forcefully injects their stance right into your brain. They are directly telling us to completely dismiss Goddard's early work on the Kallikak family. Notice how the author didn't spend 3 pages dismantling Goddard's methodology? They didn't have to. They just used the word unscientific and achieved the exact same result. That, my friends, is the sheer power of an evaluative adjective. Now, let's look at the very next clue in the text regarding Goddard's later work. The sentence continues, and again, it sounds like a totally straightforward historical recount. But make no mistake, the author has both hands firmly on the steering wheel here. Right here, the author uses positive evaluative adjectives to validate Goddard's newer methods. It shows a massive shift in their subjective stance. By calling the later studies acceptable and the IQ tests objective, the author is basically whispering in your ear, hey, you can trust this part of the research. The stance just whiplashed from a negative dismissal straight into positive validation, all because of word choice. Okay, bringing it all home with Section 5, Why Recognizing Stance Matters. So, why does all this academic detective work actually matter for you? Well, because when you follow these steps, you stop being a passive reader and you start actively interrogating the text. You get to see how the sausage is made. Step 1, identify the perspective, or the lens. Step 2, hunt down those evaluative adjectives. Those are your clues. And Step 3, use those clues to clearly determine the author's true stance. Figure out what their ultimate judgment actually is. And hey, while adjectives are absolutely your best friends in this process, you've got to keep an eye out for sneaky nouns, adverbs, and verbs too. They can be just as dripping with subjectivity. Just think about the difference between writing the researcher states versus the researcher alleges. States makes it sound like a rock-solid fact, but alleges? That casts immediate, heavy doubt. Or what about adverbs like clearly? Honestly, if an author has to explicitly tell you something is clearly true, it's usually a massive red flag that they're pushing a really strong subjective stance. The absolute biggest takeaway from all of this is that you should never, ever take academic reading at face value. Even the driest, most insanely data-heavy journal article out there was still written by a human being with a perspective, a stance, and an argument that they desperately want to win. Recognizing that fact, that's your new superpower. So, I'm going to leave you with this final question for your next investigation. Next time you read an article, what is the author secretly trying to make you believe? Don't just read for the facts, read for the hidden judgments. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your eyes peeled for those evaluative adjectives, and happy hunting.